Podcaster, comedian, and former UFC fighter Brendan Schaub believes UFC President Dana White feels threatened by YouTuber turned TV star turned musician turned boxer Jake Paul. But who is Brendan Schaub? And why does Dana White feel threatened by Jake Paul? And will the feud have a significant impact on the UFC? We'll answer all of those questions and get into a lot more. So don't go anywhere. Who is Brendan Schaub? Brendan Schaub first began his professional athletic career in the Arena Football League, playing for the Utah Blaze. After retiring from football in 2007, he turned his focus to mixed martial arts, training in boxing and jiu-jitsu, and he competed in a Colorado-based MMA organization, Ring of Fire. There, he went 4 wins with no losses, eventually winning the Ring of Fire Heavyweight Championship. After that, Schaub competed in the UFC's reality television show, The Ultimate Fighter, where competitors fight for a chance at a 6-figure UFC contract. Although Schaub didn't win the competition outright, he still managed to secure a contract to fight in the UFC. Schaub's record in the UFC was a total of 10 wins and 5 losses. Finally, in 2015, he announced on the Joe Rogan Experience that he was retiring from MMA to focus on a career in entertainment. Schaub went on to perform stand-up comedy, both as a solo act and a duo act alongside comedian Bryan Callen. Schaub filmed his own Showtime stand-up comedy special, You'd Be Surprised, which premiered in May of 2019. Schaub also hosts and co-hosts several podcasts, including The Brendan Schaub Show, in which he made the comment that UFC President Dana White feels threatened by Jake Paul. But we'll get into that a little later on. Schaub continues to practice mixed martial arts as a hobby, and in May of 2021, he earned his black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Who is Jake Paul? Jake Paul's widely varied career began on an app called Vine, where he posted short comedic videos. Before the app was taken down, Paul accrued 5.3 million followers and 2 billion views on the app. He transitioned that following to a YouTube channel that he began in 2014. His videos are mostly comedic in nature, featuring pranks, skits, and occasionally his own original rap music. Paul also had a starring role in the Disney Channel television show Bizaardvark, which only lasted for 3 seasons, and Paul only had a role in 2. Paul also has several rap songs with his entertainment conglomerate Team 10. One of his singles, It's Everyday Bro, peaked at number 91 on the Billboard 100 charts and was certified platinum with over 1 million sales. In 2018, Paul began his boxing career in an exhibition fight against Deji Olatunji, which Paul won by TKO in the 5th round. Paul made his professional boxing debut in January of 2020 in Miami, Florida. Paul defeated his opponent, fellow YouTuber Anis Gibb, by TKO in the 1st round. To date, Paul's professional boxing record is 5 wins and no losses. However, many critics claim that Paul is yet to have an actual challenging fight against an actual professional boxer. Paul's no stranger to controversy. In fact, he seems to relish on and thrive in stirring up antics. In January of 2018, Paul posted a video to his YouTube channel entitled, I Lost My Virginity, with a thumbnail of himself and his girlfriend at the time posing semi-nude. He received heavy backlash for the racy thumbnail, considering most of his YouTube audience consisted of children. Paul has also been accused of sexual harassment, scamming young children, and endangering others by throwing a house party in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. And, as we'll talk about later, he's managed to garner a personal beef with none other than UFC President Dana White himself. Did Jake Paul cheat in his boxing matches? The legitimacy of Jake Paul's boxing career has come under fire. Paul's first 3 fights weren't even against actual boxers, instead choosing to fight other YouTubers and a retired basketball player. It wasn't until Paul's 4th fight that he faced off against a legitimate fighter. Jake Paul would fight former Bellator MMA fighter and 1 welterweight champion Ben Askren on April 17, 2021, in Atlanta, Georgia. Paul won the fight by TKO in the very first round. Many called the fight into question almost immediately after the bout, posting videos on Twitter of Askren looking very content with his family after supposedly being knocked out. But fans weren't the only ones questioning the legitimacy of the fight. UFC bantamweight champion Aljamain Sterling tweeted, "Who paid the ref?" Paul was quick to brag about his fight and maintain his status as a real-deal fighter. Paul said, "I told you I was going to do it in the first round. I told you I'm a real fighter. I don't know how many times I've got to prove myself that this is for real." It didn't take too long for Paul's next challenger to come. Former UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley called out Jake Paul and dared him to fight. Paul accepted the challenge, and the two fought on August 29, 2021. The fight went 8 full rounds and went to the judges, who turned in a split decision in favor of Paul. Woodley would once again face Paul in a rematch on December 18, 2021. For the rematch, promoted with the tagline "Leave No Doubt," Paul seemingly shut down all of his doubters, knocking out Woodley in the 6th round of the fight. Regardless, some fight fans still call into question both fights between Paul and Woodley. Some claim that Woodley was holding back in the first fight, and that there was a signal from Paul for Woodley to take a dive in the second fight. Both fighters were paid $2 million each for the first fight, with Paul taking home $1.5 million, plus 70% of the pay-per-view profits in the second fight. With Jake Paul's controversies and big paydays, what is Dana White so worried? Why the grudge between the two? And will Jake Paul ever fight in the UFC? We plan on answering all of those questions, so keep watching. Why is Dana White threatened by Jake Paul? On a recent episode of the Schaub Show, Brendan Schaub made comments that Dana White feels threatened by Jake Paul. Not in the physical sense, but in the financial sense. Schaub stated, "Say what you want about Jake Paul, but he has taken the fight game, flipped it on its head. Dana's coming after him. Listen, Dana only goes after people he's threatened by." Jake Paul's huge paydays and big crowd draw may be a reason for concern for White. After all, Paul has already gotten 2 MMA fighters to go toe-to-toe with him in the boxing ring, and staying true to character, Paul's already stirring things up with the UFC bigwig. Paul took to Twitter to call out Dana White for increasing pay-per-view prices while refusing to increase payouts to fighters. White responded with a recorded video accusing the former YouTuber of using performance-enhancing drugs. On Instagram, Tyron Woodley echoed the statement, saying that the drug tests before the fights were rigged. Paul then responded with a list of demands for Dana White. First, Paul demanded a pay increase for all UFC fighters. Second, he pressured White to give UFC fighters 50% of the organization's revenue. And finally, Paul insisted that White guarantee long-term health care for every fighter. Paul challenged White to implement those demands by March 31st, 2022. In that same tweet, Paul went on to say, "Once implemented, I will immediately retire from boxing, enter USADA, and agree to a one-fight deal with the UFC to fight weak chin Jorge Masvidal." Will Jake Paul fight in the UFC? Rumors are swirling that Jake Paul will make his MMA debut in 2022, but it might not be with the UFC. Inside sources claim that Paul's in serious talks with the Professional Fighters League, or PFL. Founded in 2018, PFL's unique from UFC in that it offers year-round fighting with preseason, in-season, and championship matches. It didn't take long for Paul to stoke the fires of that flame. On Twitter, he posted a video of himself practicing kicks on a heavy bag with the caption, "First day training kicks, doubted every step of the way, but kicked down the doors of the doubters." Back on the UFC front, Dana White did respond to Paul's list of demands with another video, again accusing Paul of using steroids. Paul responded to White once more, lowering his demands to $40,000 for fighter pay, 40% revenue, and long-term health care. Although White did not respond to this new list of demands, Paul remained insistent. On his 25th birthday, he posted a list of goals for the upcoming year, and goal number 4 was to expose bully Dana White and help UFC fighters. White tried to downplay the whole feud between the two, insisting that he doesn't hate Jake Paul and doesn't blame him for wanting to make more money. White's also hesitant to commit to letting Paul fight inside the UFC octagon. He instead refers to the fight between Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. The UFC president said, "If there's a fight that could be made with some of this other stuff that's so big that my fans really want to see it, I usually do it." What do you think? Is Jake Paul a legitimate fighter or just looking for attention? Should Dana White agree to Paul's demands and let him fight in the UFC? Would you watch Jake Paul fight in the UFC? Leave your answers in the comments below and be sure to subscribe for more UFC news.